thing, there is a button, and it works all the way for Mike Rawlingson at the UK. I'm gonna mute myself and put him on a big screen.
Oh, I'm spotlighted. Right. Can you hear me, everyone? Right. Okay. I'm going to tell a story, a devil story. I think it's the only devil story I know. So I've told it a couple of years ago, but I'm sure you'll all have forgotten. So I'll tell it again. And this story took place quite a long time ago in a small town in Somerset that nobody had ever heard of. Nobody in the world had heard of this small town called Glastonbury, although it's become a little bit famous since. Now, in the time that this story took place, the world was a much quieter place. There were no chainsaws or cars or tractors or aeroplanes, no amplifiers, no horrid rave music. The world was quiet. There was the sound of church bells, of horses neighing, of birds singing. And in those days, the seasons were more predictable too. In the spring, it was warm and balmy. You could hear the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves that had just sprouted. You could hear the song of the birds. The birds sung. There were so many birds in those days, so many, many more birds than there are now. And they all had their unique individual song. They sang from dawn till dusk, and even in the night, the thrushes and nightjars and nightingales. And during the day, you could hear the blackbirds singing their most distinctive song. "This is my tree, so fuck off!" Which, well, that's a rough translation of the blackbird's song. You could hear the sound of children's laughter and the sound of the church bells. And in the summer, it was warm. You could hear the sound of children's laughter, and the birds still sang. You could hear the swish of scythes cutting the hay. You could hear the frolics of young lovers in the hay. The world was a much better place then, I think. In the autumn, you could hear the sound of wood being chopped and sawn ready for winter, the horses neighing, the harvest being gathered home, the songs of the harvest festival. And in the winter, it was quiet because it was cold and the ground was frozen and the streams were frozen and the ponds and lakes. Everything was cold and quiet, apart from the sound of horses and church bells and children, of course, throwing snowballs at each other and laughing. And in those days, people used to celebrate the changing seasons. And as it's spring, we'll have them celebrating spring, the equinox. Because, of course, in Glastonbury to this day, they still celebrate all the changing of the seasons. But they had an equinox, an equinox celebration, which has just passed. Now, this particular year, it was raining. It poured with rain, and the ground was muddy. It was most uncharacteristic. And it was decided that the festivities would be held in the Tithe barn a couple of miles out of Glastonbury. Now, Glastonbury was famous for many things, even in those days, and most famous of all were its pies, which were made by the Pieman family. Very unimaginative name for them, I think, but there we go. The older man, the master pie maker, was called William Pieman the Elder. His son, the journeyman, was William Pieman the Younger. And when he had a son, his son was called William Pieman the Even Younger. Now, these piemen made the most fantastic pies. Of course, the pies are probably made by their wives, but in those days, women didn't come into the story quite so often as they should have done. So this story mainly concerns the menfolk. Well, the pies they made were magnificent. They had boar and bilberry, chicken and cranberry, duck and damson. Oh, I don't know, lamb and loganberry, mutton and mulberry, pork and prune. They had so many wonderful pies, and that shop was sold so many pies. There were queues outside the shop every day. Of course, they had a vegan option as well. They made nettle and turnip and dandelion pies, all in a beautiful, creamy cardboard sauce, which the vegan said was absolutely delicious. They also made cakes with cream and eggs and butter and milk and flour and nuts. In fact, everything that people are allergic to these days. But in those days, of course, people weren't allergic to anything. They just ate what they could afford. And so they made their pies and cakes. They even made some lovely little brown cakes, some sort of, they tasted a bit funny and nobody really knew what was in them, but they did know that when they ate one, they felt so happy and giggly for an hour or two afterwards. And those cakes were as popular in Glastonbury as they are in Amsterdam and many other parts of the world. And they're still popular today. Anyway, the three piemen set off to celebrate the solstice at the tithe barn. And they put all their pies on their cart and they set off, and it was horrible. It was raining and muddy, typical first day of spring, really. And they set off and they pulled their cart laden with pies, and the wheels got stuck in the mud. And it was, generally quite miserable, but they knew that they'd do well at the solstice celebration, so they carried on until they reached a crossroads, and then they decided to stop and have a rest. Now, stopping at a crossroads is always a bit of a dangerous place to stop because we know who hangs out there. And before too long, they'd sat down on the edge of their cart, perched on the edge to avoid the mud, and they smelt an unfamiliar smell. Now, of course, coming from Glastonbury, they were familiar with the smell of frankincense and sandalwood and a certain herbal tobacco that people used to smoke with great frequency. But this was a sulphurous sort of smell, a sort of horrible. And they looked around, and there he was, in his cloak, with his hood up, trying to hide his horns, and his tail tucked under his cloak. But he couldn't hide the fact of his hooves, his cloven black hooves. It was the devil. "Well, gentlemen, may I join you?" "Well, do we have a choice?" said William Pymont the elder. That, by the way, is a Somerset accent, an attempt at one anyway. "Well, do we have a choice?" "Not really," said the devil. "Well, you'd better sit yourself down then, but you'll get a muddy arse, I'll tell you that." "Oh, no, I won't," said the devil, and he waved his arms, and suddenly the ground was dry and covered with spring flowers, and the air was warm, and the rain had stopped. And the devil sat down, and they all sat down. Said the devil, "Those pies smell good. Do you mind if I help myself?" "Well, do we have a choice?" said William Pymon the elder. "Not really," said the devil, helping himself to a duck and damson pie, which he ate with great relish. And they sat and chatted, and they got on quite well in the end. They talked about all the problems facing society, how all the rich people seemed to get richer and richer, while poor people hardly had anywhere to live. And William Pymon the elder said how unfair that was, and the devil said, "Well, I could make you very rich, you know. You know how those people got so rich, don't you?" No, you're not having my soul," said William Pymon the elder. "I would be quite happy as I am." They talked about how the French keep stealing all our fish, how the Scots want to be independent. They talked about the plague spreading across the land. And they had quite a nice chat, during which the devil helped himself to two of those little brown pies, and by the end of it he was in rather a jolly mood. "Well," said the devil, "I've had a pleasant lunch with you. I'm going to grant you a wish each. Oh, no, thank you. We don't want any of your wishes. We know what you're like. You'll be after our soul in a year and a day, and we'll have to answer riddles and stupid questions, and you take our soul down to hell. No, we'll just be, we'll carry on, and you just be on your way. Thank you very much. And the devil said, no, I promise. I'll grant you a wish each, no strings attached. Will you swear on the Bible, then? No, don't be silly, said the devil. I'm not falling for that. But I will grant you a wish each. All right, said William Pieman the elder. I would like to be twice as clever as I am now. I'd like to know where the stars go during the day and where the sun goes at night. And I'd just like to be twice as clever as I am now. Well, I think that can be arranged, said the devil. Twice as clever, are you sure? Yes, quite sure, said William Pieman the elder. All right, said the devil. He waved his arms. The sky went dark. There was a flash of lightning. Special effects there. There's a flash of lightning, a puff of smoke, and when the smoke cleared, William Pieman the elder was twice as clever as he is now. In fact, if he were alive today and living in England, he'd probably be able to read The Guardian, which is a rather upmarket newspaper for those who don't know. And the devil turned to the journeyman, William Pieman the younger, and said, what would you like for your wish? Oh, well, I'd like to be twice as clever as him. So I'd like to be 4 times as clever as I am now, please. I'd like to know where the stars go during the day. I'd like to know where the sun goes at night. I'd like to know why birds don't fall out of the sky and why fish don't drown in the sea. And I'd like to know how he works out my wages as well. So I'd like to be 4 times as clever as I am now. Are you sure, said the devil. Yes, quite sure. All right, said the devil. The sky went dark. There was a flash of lightning, a puff of smoke. And when the smoke cleared, William Pieman the younger was 4 times as clever as he had been. In fact, if he was alive today, he'd probably be able to do the Guardian crossword. The devil now turned to the young lad, the apprentice, William Pieman the even younger, and said, and what would you like for your wish? Oh, well, I'd like to be even cleverer than those two. I'd like to be 6 times as clever as I am, or 7, maybe 8. I don't know, which is bigger, 7 or 8? 8, said the devil. All right, I'd like to be 8 times as clever as I am now and be cleverer than everybody you know. Are you sure, said the devil? You really want to be 8 times as clever as you are now? Yes, I do. Actually, what, I'd like to be 10 times as clever as I am now. Yeah, I'll show them all. I'll be 10 times as clever as I am now, please. Are you sure, said the devil? Yes, quite sure. All right, said the devil. He waved his arms. The sky went dark. There was a huge flash of thunder, a huge flash of lightning, big puff of smoke. And when the smoke cleared, the devil had disappeared. Once more the ground was muddy, and the rain had returned. And the boy, the young lad, had turned into a girl.